right, everyone, welcome back. Hope everyone had a good lunch. We are about to dive into our hybrid block 2, which is covering theme 1, which is improve the culture of donation, and theme 2, inform universal practices for donation, sorry. All right. So my name is Jen Woolfsmith, and I am a PFD co-lead at CDTRP. But in my other life, I'm actually an accountant by trade. And I work for a company called Nova Chemicals. I serve as the VP of Sustainability right here in Calgary. I call Calgary home. And I've worked there for 24 years now with assignments across Europe and US and Canada. But I'm actually really excited to be here in the room with you guys today, because I can tell you that the conversation happening here is way more interesting than the meetings I was stuck in downtown this morning. So I'm really looking forward to this session. So for those of you that don't know my story, my beautiful daughter, Mackenzy, donated her heart, liver, and kidneys on May 4th, 2012, at the age of 22 months. And while she donated 4 organs, I often say that she saved 5 lives that day, because she also saved mine through the course of her brave donation. Mackenzy was my only child at the time of her death, and I'm not ashamed to admit that she was the center of my universe. And I could never have imagined how I would ever go about living without her. But over the course of 3 days, right across the street from here at the Alberta Children's Hospital, she showed me time and time again how determined she was to make her donation a reality. Even though she was never conscious and she was so young, she definitely made it happen with lots of support, of course, from her medical team. So this was back in 2012 when there were no options for DCD. And because she was so unstable throughout those 3 days, it felt like everyone who came into the room reminded me time and time again that if her heart should stop at any point before they could recover her organs, then she would no longer be eligible for donation. And I admit that made me really nervous at first. I had to sit and watch her try and find her equilibrium time and time again, wondering if we were doing the right thing by pursuing donation, but most of all, terrified that she could slip away from me at any moment. But she hung on every single time. And by the 3rd day, when they would come in to remind me that, should her heart stop, I would actually just stop them and say, don't worry, she's got this. And she did. I have no idea why or how she fought as hard as she did. But in my heart, I believe she was giving a gift to me, as well as her recipients and their families. Because through her donation, she gave me a small glimmer of hope that I could carry with me as I had to learn to live without her. Hope that something good could come out of so much tragedy. Hope that there was still going to be parts of her here in this world, even though they were no longer mine to hold. And hope that perhaps there was something bigger than us happening that day. So I love that these 2 themes are coming together in this next session, because they are so intertwined. The practices and the culture, technical and behavioral, because it's going to take all of it to achieve the breakthrough thinking that can really accelerate donation and meet the demands for organs. But keep in mind that achieving the full potential on the donation side is also about giving donors and their families that chance to make a difference if donation is right for them. Maybe create a little hope in some of their darkest hours, just as it did for me. So with that, I would like to invite Dr. Sunny Dhanani to the stage to moderate this next session. Dr. Dhanani is the Chief of CHEO's Pediatric ICU and professor at the University of Ottawa. He chairs the Canadian Donation Physician Network and other national committees, leads international research on post-cardiac arrest death determination for donation, and is CDTRP Associate Director for Donation.
Thanks, Jen. I think that theme is going to run through the next hour or two, this idea of hope. It's really inspirational and brave to come up and share that story with us. And I think this is going to be a really exciting next hour, because it is inspiring. It is breakthrough science. And this is what we're doing here. So thank you all for filling this room, and for you virtually for joining us. I'm going to give you 5 minutes of background to set you up for the science that you're going to hear about, and then our panel discussion. I'm going to give you some hope. The top line is the transplant numbers over the last almost 15 years. They are finally starting to shoot up. A little blip in 2019, something happened there. And those skewed, our donation numbers, which is the lower bar, is also on the rise, actually up by 50%. And so that is a huge number that puts us in the top 6 to 10 countries in the world for donation and transplantation. That's really impressive. Somebody was not happy with that. Can we fix that? Anyone? This is because we've increased donation across the country. The green bar is current, and the red bar was 2008. Every province has done their part, which means you guys have impacted this. It's increased everywhere, not just for brain death donation, neurologically deceased donation, but also for donation after circulatory death, which is when you have a catastrophic injury, you don't fulfill brain death criteria, but you can still now be a donor since about 2006. And you can see the green is living donors, the dark red is DCD donors, which in some provinces is almost 50% of deceased donation. And so that has been our biggest increase. That didn't come without controversies. And even though we've seen success, last year there was unverified data, and thank you CBS for this data, there were almost 700 people on the waiting list who died. So we almost 3,500 transplants, way more than we were in 2008, but not good enough. And when we do have donors, this goes to what Jen's talking about, that not all of them are eligible, and when they are, not all of them get to offer to their full potential. This is the number of organs recovered per patient, and overall, it's about 2.5. So usually a kidney, maybe a liver, maybe both kidneys. But imagine we can also do lungs, 2 lungs, the heart, small bowel, and pancreas. The liver can be split. So we often say one donor can save 8 lives. And you can see that trend is going down. And the bottom line is for DCD donors. Because circulation stops for this type of donation, those organs are now not being perfused. And that's hard for the transplant recipient if those organs are in good shape. So it's always less than 2. How do we help? Well, we've got cold preservation techniques. The transplant teams then put, as we've seen, on ice, and that preserves an organ long enough to then be transplanted. We've got teams, especially in Toronto, but all over Canada, that are leading practice where they take those organs from an individual, whether they're good or marginal, and they put them on a pump that simulates the heart, and we put oxygen in them, and that's actually a pair of lungs in a glass jar. Sci-fi. This started in Canada. And now we want to go one step further to do that same pump, but make sure those organs are getting blood flow and oxygen for as long as possible. So once someone is declared a donor, they go through the withdrawal process, their heart and circulation stops, and then the surgical teams put this pump back while the organs are still in the body. This is called normothermic regional perfusion. We call it NRP. And that reperfuses those organs right away. So our biggest worry is the start of withdrawal of life-sustaining measures, WLSM, is what we call warm ischemia. This is when blood flow is slowing down and those organs are starting to die. Then once death occurs, we wait 5 minutes to make sure that one is dead before organs are recovered, because we'd never want to do the opposite of taking organs in that time. And there's no blood flow. But NRP, all of a sudden, instead of continuing that no blood flow state, reperfuses those organs very quickly. And the outcomes for this are those organs are absolutely transplantable. Thanks, Murat, for these slides. So the benefits are, this is a very controlled process rather than surgical teams quickly taking organs and then putting them on ice or putting them on that ex vivo perfusion machine. They have time. That in fact, transplant outcomes in this method of NRP are better than we've ever seen. And in fact, in this situation where DCD, actually we couldn't take the heart because we were fundamentally waiting for perfusion to not resume, that if the heart resumed, then we couldn't do it. But now we can do that. So the potential for heart transplant is going up. Now, we want to make sure as we reperfuse the body that we don't reinstate life. And so this brain-based definition that we published last year, it was a Canadian evidence-based consensus that is now being adopted across the world, actually, focuses the attention on the medical definition of death being the brain. And that is super important, a hard concept, but super important. It means that if the heart and circulation stop, as long as the brain doesn't restart, death continues to be finite and permanent. And that's super important. However, as NRP looks so exciting, the idea is that we need to make sure that circulation does not mean reperfusion to the brain. That's what we're thinking now. But in fact, we can't just think that. We need science to figure out what the link is between the circulation and brain flow, what brain flow means to brain ischemia or death, and what that means for function. And that's going to help us feel more secure that NRP is the right thing to do. So the questions that are going to be answered or being trying to answered in the research that will follow me is to make sure that NRP is safe for donors and our dead donor rule. That when does brain flow and activity stop so that organs can be recovered and death is secure? Does the NRP process actually restart blood flow? Is that possible? And if surgical techniques like clamping vessels to make sure there's no blood flow, when they're done, are they safe enough?